Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Preacher Dad podcast. My name is Jared, and I'm the Preacher Dad. And on this episode of Fatherhood Friday, we discuss sheltering our children. What is the line there? Can you shelter too much? What's the purpose? And we just discuss the things that we do or don't do in sheltering our children from the influence and the temptations of the world. So I hope this is encouraging and helpful in some way to you on your fatherhood or parenting journey. But before we get started, I just want to remind you that this podcast is brought to you in part by Cornerstone Fellowship. Cornerstone Fellowship is the little church with a big heart just a little north of Toomsboro, Georgia. And we would love to love you, and we love Jesus Christ and want to share him with you. So if you'd like to come on over and experience the love of Christ with us, we would love that. So come on over to Cornerstone Fellowship, or you can check us out online at cornerstonefellowship-ga.org. That's cornerstonefellowship-ga.org. All right, without further ado, let's start Fatherhood Friday. All right, everybody, welcome to Fatherhood Friday. We're glad to have you here. Hope your Friday is starting well. Maybe it's early in the morning for you. Maybe it's late at night. Whatever it is, I hope it's going good. This is Fatherhood Friday, and I'm here with my fatherhood panel, Mr. Tony Russell and Mr. Nate Eisner and Mr. Matt Stewart. And I am Jared Hinton, and I am the Preacher Dad, and that's probably how you found this little episode of the Preacher Dad podcast. Tonight, we are going to discuss sheltering our kids. And should we or shouldn't we? How much is too much? There's certainly a lot of discussion in parenting groups these days about how to shelter your kids or how not to. It's a bad thing. It's a good thing. We figured we kind of throw our opinion out there and maybe have some discussion about it. So Tony, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, just to begin with, the idea that like I'm gonna assign this pejorative to your parenting style. I'm gonna call it vigorous protection against evil for your children. That doesn't strike me as, a bad thing. You sheltering. That's kind of your prerogative as a parent.
No, we're going to label you as a helicopter parent. That's a negative pejorative.
That's usually how it gets modified because, if you say you're sheltering your kids, it's like, well, yeah, I love them. What are you doing? You stick them outside in the rain? What are you doing to your kids? I think that where it can go astray is whenever when you start to take away things that need to be natural challenges to your children to overcome. And that slips into my moral protection compass in some kind of a way. And I don't have a clue what is the right standard to necessarily prescribe to everybody in every case, in every scenario. You got to know your kids. Your kids are obviously going to be unique to your own family culture, to their own spiritual progression. And their own sensitivity. Some things are going to be a lot closer to their heart and a bigger struggle. Some things they might have been struggles you've had your whole life, and they're not going to identify with them at all. So there's different ways that you got to be responsive to who your kids are. But the general idea of this world is a heinous, evil place, and most of the systems of power currently in our culture are seeking my kids to destroy and corrupt them, to turn them first and foremost against God, and then secondly against me and their mom. The pressure to reject family, to reject paternity, to reject the hierarchy of godliness is extraordinarily high in the culture. And so I do feel like the things that I do to be able to try to protect my kids from that kind of an onslaught would probably be perceived as sheltering. In some capacity to others. It's one of the reasons why we homeschool, as we can't really afford a good private Christian school because I don't make $400,000 a year or whatever the minimum base requirement salary is to be able to do something like that. Especially if you have a lot of kids, that tuition can kind of go up pretty quickly. But I definitely, my wife and I, when we first got married, we set out that we felt like having her stay at home to have the capacity to educate our children was the absolute highest thing that we could put in our family structure under Christ's lordship. That we needed to have that set up to protect who our kids grow into and become. And I I praise God that He's given us the opportunity to do that. We didn't always throughout the majority of our marriage have the financial wherewithal to do stuff like that, but we did in time for my kids once they started going to school. So that was kind of a huge aspect of the way that we wanted our family to work. The biggest reason why is we wanted a throttle on what kind of cultural interjections they were going to get. It seems like every mechanism you have in public school systems, especially, are meant to be, um, you know, subversive vectors to be able to start getting your kids to question everything, to be exposed to way more things than you want to. Math classes turn into LGBT lessons. There's all kinds of sidestepping that goes in there, and I didn't want to contend with that for the entirety of my kids' career.
Yeah.
We wanted to be the ones to let our kids be introduced, to sexual education in a biblical context, in a Christian context, and not in the fourth grade. We wanted it to happen when they were actually old enough and ready for it. And I have
I
an
think
11-year-old son. I still don't think he's there.
I hear your heart here, Tony, and
Yeah,
I love it. And many, it very much reflects what is in my heart. Here's the problem that I see that develops, and I've seen a lot of homeschooling families,
yeah,
especially, but plenty of other Christian families. But they get in this situation where they are protecting their kids from everything. They are,
yeah,
and on the surface you'd say, well, why would you not want to protect your kids from everything? But you get to this point where, and I think we've probably all met this family somewhere where it's like, my kids don't go to the grocery store because they might hear rock music played over the loudspeaker, and
yeah,
they might see a bikini on on a magazine that's at the grocery store, and that's a problem. I remember going to the grocery store and going, this is battle time. This is
yeah.
battle time. I've got to guard my eyes, and I can remember things like that. But you know, how much of that are we going overboard? Are we weakening our kids by never exposing them to any kind of, they're going to be in the world. They can't help it, but we don't want them to
Right.
be of the world. But are we handicapping them? I'm not saying we go sit them down in front of let's go watch a rated R movie, son, so you can get a little
Yeah,
stronger. There's a time and a
yeah,
place for watching movies, but we got to be, like you were saying, we have to tailor it to the needs of our children. But I think
yeah,
there's danger that we could potentially take that idea of protecting them too far, because the goal of parenting, biblically speaking, is to shoot the arrow. It's not just to forever sharpen it. And so there's a time for sharpening that arrow, for keeping it
yeah,
safe in the quiver, and there's a time for shooting it. And if we are not preparing them to go out into the world and interact with people who use bad language, who don't
yeah,
dress the way they ought to, you know, are we handicapping them by not by I, I hate the term overprotecting them, because I'm not sure if I want to say that overprotection can exist, but
right.
there's, I think, a danger there. And I think we've probably all experienced that, at least observing other families. That's like, man, you're really keeping your son from being able to function in the world because he can't see a woman who's got an open button on her collar. you know
So you bring up an incredibly important distinction there. Like, there's a difference between your son and your daughter when it comes to this kind of a threshold. Men generally are not valuable until they have experience. The way you get experience, unfortunately, is through going through hardship. 90% of the time, I my son, when it comes to Is he going to be in an environment where he's going to hear curse words? I'm not as fearful about that. Is he going to be in a situation where I would personally struggle to try to hold my thoughts in check because of what's visually there to be able to tempt him? I don't have any right, I don't think, as a parent, to try to put him into a situation like that when I know myself, as someone who has years and years and years of practice failing in this area and struggling against this area and trying to win in this area, to try to put him a fairly now he's still a little young for this, but I'm speaking kind of whenever he gets a little bit older and starts to actually notice the threshold of lust that's out there. I want to make sure that I'm guarding him very vigorously in that regard. And when I say guarding, I mean like controlling the environments I can control.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm at a gas station and somebody else is in that car next to us doing whatever, being whatever level of exposure, I don't feel any moral obligation to go over to that car, make a scene about how bad or inappropriate they are, and make sure that they know that my kid is in the other car and needs to be protected against them. I think that's foolishness. I don't think that prepares my son well, and I don't think that's a witness to them that's of any value or meaningfulness at all. I think that's more important in those moments to help demonstrate how to properly handle that myself to my son, so he can see this doesn't have to cause a neurological breakdown. It can just be ignored and walk past, and you don't have to let this into your life. That doesn't mean that that's going to be the same thing that I allow into my home. My home is going to be well guarded against those types of influences and what's allowed to be participated with or watched or listened to, or what video games are going to be played. All of that is going to be very, very filtered from my perspective. And just for a example of threshold, there was a season of Fortnite, which is an incredibly innocuous game that came on, but the way they were posing all their figures was extraordinarily suggestive, and it actually hit my wife's radar before it hit mine, because I know cartoons are really below my radar on a lot of that kind of stuff. But she was concerned about it, and my thought was, well, if your red flag went off, then that's all I need to know. I need to step in and guard. And so we shut down Fortnite for a little while until that season had passed. And I didn't sit down with my son and explain to him the ins and outs of what everything was going on, because he's still got a level of innocence I don't wish to yet destroy. But at the same time, it was an opportunity for us to set the expectation with him that, hey, just because it's available doesn't mean it's for us. Not everything that's out there needs to be consumed. You have to have some way and to filter and regulate what you're going to allow to come in and entertain you. And these types of things, there are things there that we don't want to be entertained by, and we have the ability to choose those things.
Yeah.
But going back to okay, do I take them to a theme park or something like that? Well, I don't know. As a teenager growing up, I always had a hard time at theme parks. I did not ever experience a theme park that didn't feel like a freaking war. And that's just because of the way that I'm queued up visually. And I know that not everybody is the same way that I am for that kind of stuff. But for me, it was always a struggle. And so in my mind,
me too, man.
So
plenty of failure at the theme park, baby.
So my thought of taking my son to a place like that where, there's like a water park or whatever, like I'm not myself going to go anywhere near something like that. I definitely shouldn't be taking a son who's experiencing pubescent hormones and negative self-control to the same area and expect that that's going to sharpen him. It's not. It's going to crush him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Matt, do you take your kids to theme parks?
We do. We get season passes. but I will say, though, every summer we have the conversation with the kids. Like, look, you're going to see some stuff. You're going to see a lot of everything. You're going to see LGBTQ stuff. You're going to see awful dressing. Like, you're going to see everything. Hear cuss words. But look, that stuff is not. It's not acceptable. It may seem like it's normal and it's the thing to do, but we gotta teach them. I mean, even our 5-year-olds were like, listen, we're going to go there today and we're going to see two boys holding hands, and that is not right. and we talk about that a little bit. So even we were in line, I forget which daughter it was, but I'm like, I'm like, look at that girl right there. You like the way that she's dressed? She was wearing like spikes and just really just all kind of crazy stuff. And she's like, well, first of all, she said, I didn't even notice her, which I'm like, well, that's good. But then and then I'm like, would you ever want to dress like that? And she goes, no, of course not. And so, but like you were saying, Tony, control what you can control. So like we make sure our daughters know how to dress feminine, right? And that starts with my wife. She's the example, because when they go out, they're going to see a lot of girls that are even, I don't know, this might hit a few people, but even some Christian girls dressing sloppy, wearing sweatpants, baggy shirts, like that's just not really feminine, And so we're just trying to teach the girls that, especially, but yeah, they're going to see it all when you go to places like that. And we just try to be upfront with them and teach them as much as we can. And obviously we start with scripture when it comes to teaching.
Let me challenge you a little bit. Would you take them to see a movie that had those things in it?
We try to, I would say no, unless we do our research and it still gets past us. Like we try not to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we look up everything. We let them watch. Now I will say, I kind of slipped up a little bit. We were at the beach a couple weeks ago, and we came in for lunch, and the kids turned on the TV. We watch HGTV a lot until there's a weird couple on there, then we change it. But which is now it's like every other one. But anyway, so we came across Dumb and Dumber, and I'm like, all right, I know. I said, listen. I said, May, don't worry. I know when the cuss words are coming up. Don't worry. And like 20 seconds later, I missed one. But so I did kind of mess up a little bit there. But I could. It's such a good movie.
That's funny.
But yeah, we do try to. Oh, and so even.
Hey, parents, if you're looking for a fun and entertaining way to teach your children about character, then I've got the right podcast for you to check out. It's called Character Stories Podcast. On the Character Stories Podcast, we do voices of all shapes and sizes, and we have occasionally sound effects as well. And I would love for you to come and join us over there and hear a great story that has a great lesson and moral in it as well. So come on over and check out the Character Stories Podcast today.
Just this past weekend, my son, who's 6, he was on the kids' YouTube. Is that what it's called? I don't know. Anyway, there's a little kids. Yeah. Anyway, no, I take that back. No, we were watching. What's the Paw Patrol thing? Well, there's one little version of it, Rubble and Friends or something. Is one of those, one version of Paw Patrol, and it had like a boy dog dressed in pink and whatever, and so we had to change that. So we try to keep it away from it as much as possible.
It's really hard to do because we got burned before on saying, oh, the kids can probably watch this, it's probably fine. And this seems like an innocuous, safe kind of a film to let them watch, and they end up doing things or saying things in that movie that we do not want our kids to hear yet. And so now we never let our kids watch anything that we haven't previewed first. And it's not always because there's going to be bad language or sensuality. Sometimes there are things that are too scary for our littlest ones to endure. We're not really interested in staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning, helping them to calm down and go to sleep. So, even things like The Chosen, which is a great series, I really love it. We watch every episode before any of the kids watch one, because there's some things in there that are kind of scary for our younger kids. So it's really challenging in today's world to be able to effectively keep your kids from dangers. But I think that we need to be able to recognize when, like Tony, like you're saying, in that moment when you're out in the world and somebody walks up and they're doing drugs or they're dressed inappropriately or they're talking like they shouldn't talk, things come up and they happen. And I am trying not to kind of freak out when the kids go, what are they smoking, Daddy? Or what does beep mean, Daddy?
I smell a skunk. Where's that skunk coming from? Well, it's marijuana in Virginia.
Ask your mother.
Yeah. I'm trying not to be the dad that freaks out and goes, don't say that word.
Yeah.
I want to be more like the guy that says, and I'm trying to be the dad that goes, hey, we don't want to say that word. It's not a nice word, so just don't say it anymore. Or, well, that person just needs Jesus, buddy. They're clearly having some real issues in their life. Maybe they're drunk on the side of the road or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, you know what? That's my friend Tony. He's okay. There's nothing wrong. We're gonna pray for him. He just needs more of Jesus.
That's really good, because that's something. My kids are little, and so I feel we have a little time before we have to seriously buckle down on this stuff. But even so, my kids don't have free reign over the iPad now. We don't also have internet where I live, because we live in the middle of absolute nowhere. So even if they wanted to, they couldn't get on it. But the few moments we can connect to a hotspot, same thing. We preview what we're watching, and we'll stick with the things that we know are safe. But what you just said there, I think, is a great mindset to have about when those questions come up, because I've had that before. I'm trying to remember the exact moment that it was, but my older daughter asked me a question. I don't remember if it had something to do with LGBTQ or something. It was something that we saw either in public or a commercial that came on somewhere. And what I told her was a very similar thing to what you just said, was rather than trying to explain it to a 4-year-old to understand, well, that person just doesn't know the Lord, and that's somebody that we need to pray for. And I think instilling that mindset at a young age is a very healthy way to distinguish that there is right from wrong, but not in a religious way that is us against them, or that we are more self-righteous than they are, because the root cause of why they are doing the thing that we are deeming bad is ultimately sin, in the fact that they don't know the Lord and they are living under deception. And so I think instilling that mindset from a young age is huge. So I like what you said.
Yeah, that's better than what I do, and I just call them names. So good job.
There's a time and place for both.
I'm proud of you. Hey, I've got a question, if it's okay. As we've been talking, I've been thinking, like, did my parents shelter me too much or not enough? So I was just kind of thinking about that. So any of you want to share? I know your parents, they may be listening.
You need to answer the question first. It's your question.
I can do that. No, I wasn't sheltered very much. I had a lot of freedom. I mean, thankfully, by God's grace, I spent most of the time with Christian friends in a youth group and stuff like that. So we weren't out in situations to get caught up in stuff. It was fairly clean, innocent stuff we were doing. But like with the computer, and all, which I guess the computer, everybody got laptops when we were like, what, 16 or 18, we get desktops or something. I can't remember, but yeah, that's not a good time for boys to have access to the computer, so I would say we are much more strict than my parents were.
Mm-hmm. What about you other guys?
I went to public school.
Oh, Tony went to public school. He's just lucky to be a Christian at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But seriously, go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, I was homeschooled. And so similar to Matt, the crowd I was running with was really fine. I mean, it was when I got to youth group, that's when I really first started mingling with public school kids. And so there were a few influences that were not great, that certainly I wouldn't say introduced me to things, but definitely encouraged not great behavior. But even so, that was quickly corrected. I think that's by God's grace, really, is all I can credit that to, that those influences didn't stick around long. And ultimately, I did find a better group of people to hang with. And so from the standpoint of actually running around, I wasn't out smoking pot and, breaking into stores and stuff, whatever public schoolers do. I don't know, Tony, you tell me, but my issue is the internet, like Matt said.
Yeah.
The problem there is, that's, to me, I tried to hide it, and I think I did a pretty okay job at it. And for me, the attention was living a double life from a very young age and not learning how to process that and being too afraid to take that to anyone. And so that was something I struggled with for a long time. And thankfully, there were some really great guys in my circle that helped me through that to a degree. But even so, that was something that the Lord really didn't deliver me from until really right before I got married. And, that's a huge part of my testimony, is really just miraculous deliverance, because I know that, I won't go into too much detail because I don't know if kids are watching the show, this show, but there are certainly things that I was delivered from that I can accredit to only the Lord, because it is not by my own strength that I've been a little over 5 years clean. So, yeah, but that's, I don't know if that actually answers the question as far as, how much was too much sheltering. I had access to the internet, and I think if there's any lessons I've taken away from my childhood, is that's a big one. It's one of the bigger ones, or is really being mindful of what my kids have access to, and especially as they get to be older, because I remember that drawing myself, when you get to be 13, 14, and all your friends have cell phones and all your friends have Facebook accounts. And, what kid is not going to want to be like their friends? And so that's something that you have to come to, you can't just, I don't know, that's that. Thankfully, I have some time before I have to really, truly worry about that. But it is something I want to be thinking about now and thinking of ahead of time, because I don't want to be the parent that just says, well, you can't have that and do as I say, because that ultimately was rebellion. And I know some kids that had that, and they, had secret Facebook accounts and, stuff like that. So I don't want to go that far, but at the same time, I also want to be able to explain to them, hey, your mother and I are not going to let you do this for this reason. It's because we love you. And it's also because your dad made some mistakes. And I learned from experience that I was not able to handle these things. And you can learn from my mistakes. So learning how to explain that to them. Again, I've got probably about 10 years before I have to worry about that, but I still want to be thinking.
Yeah. One of the things that's a difficult factor that needs to be, I think, highly considered is that when we were kids growing up, there were no targeting algorithms. There was no mass metadata research that knew exactly what you watched for the last 4 months and how to potentially entice you into this next new thing. The enemy is much different than whenever we grew up. And
it's a new world. It's a new world.
And it's a changing world depending on how old your kids are now. If you got teenagers now versus what Nate's little ones are going to have to face, that's going to be a new world all over. Probably gone through 2 or 3 remakes by the time you get up to that. So it's gonna. When I grew up, I went to public school all over the country, Ohio and Tennessee and Virginia. Not Virginia, I'm sorry, West Virginia. No, I never went to school in West Virginia. Never mind. I think it was just Tennessee and Ohio. But anyway, the cultural rot that I remember struggling against when I was a kid. My dad always told us, that your lights to these schools. You've got to be, you're like missionaries to your schoolmates. And I always thought of it that way, that, I'm not going to be loved or accepted here, but I'm here to make an impression, to be a good light. I would never have that conversation with my kids now, because the public schools now are way different than what I was facing whenever I was going through them in the
I
90s and early 2000s.
I was thinking about that same thing, Tony. Like, things are so much different now, and my
Yeah.
mom and dad really did the best that they could, but there were some
Yeah.
things that were happening in our culture that they were not aware of. The
Right.
proliferation of the P word, and I think we have to say the P word because I think if we say it out loud, YouTube will give us a strike and we'll take our video down maybe. But the proliferation of the P word throughout the internet was something that was just kind of coming around, and they weren't totally aware of everything that was accessible. So, to them, having the computer out in the middle of the kitchen was fine. But
Yeah.
late at night, nobody's out in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And so, people sneak up there and get on it. And so, turning the internet off at night was also something that they didn't think about doing for a little while. They did eventually, I think, but it's just like I can say that I am way more strict about some things than my parents ever were. But I also think that we got to compare apples and oranges. And
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm doing some things that my kids one day will go, why did my dad do that? Didn't he know? And it's just the way that life goes sometimes.
I tell you one area where I would imagine I'm a good bit looser than all of you guys. And I don't know. I kind of am somewhat of a Gestapo kind of person.
Bring it on. I want to judge you. Come on.
Over the weekend, I watched 2 Chinese movies, Chinese animated movies. I don't have any idea what they were called, but I watched them with my kids, and they were both about Chinese mythology. One of them was they're narratives, they're just stories and stuff. But one was about the Monkey King and the Great Buddha, and the other one was about some dumb little demon kid that was
a demon kid. He was the hero, wasn't he?
He ended up being the one that saved the hero. So, but yeah. So, but it's the whole yin and yang kind of mythology. But I've watched both of those on purpose because it was I thought a really really good teaching tool with my kids. There wasn't anything morally crazy in any of the movies. They were, as far as like fundamental themes of a story go, they were very quite good. But the general idea was like these are mythologies from a lost pagan people halfway across the world. But what do they recognize? They recognize some of the same fundamental truths we find in Christianity. This is how God kind of reaffirms his truthfulness. You can see his themes throughout every lie that's out there that's trying to compete for your religious narratives. There's this idea that there's a master good that has to sit in judgment over all the world, and that evil was once part of heaven but fell once it committed itself to evil. But it didn't have to be that way. It only became evil after it rebelled against the great good. Some of those things that are out there that were common themes throughout the story. It's like you're going to see this a lot. Christianity is the capital T truth, but there's a lot of other things that will try to disguise that and say, see, we're just the same. We're just as good, or we know a little bit more of the truth than you do, and it's disguised up in these other decorative flavors. And my kids thought it was both really dumb movies, so they didn't like either one of them. I don't know. The object lesson was quite good, but I'm not worried about them falling in love with pagan religion. But it is one of those things where I do know a lot of Christians out there, like with same thing with like Harry Potter and stuff like that, where that's kind of a dividing line amongst parents of whether or not we should allow our kids to, watch these movies with real satanic spells in them, or if they should consider this to be entertaining. And that's you might have guessed where I land on that one, but
where do you think I land on that one?
I don't know. I was just trying to poke.
What do you think, Jared?
I know that you let your kids read Harry Potter books.
Oh yeah. So May reads reads it with them, and then they can.
So she's introducing them to witchcraft.
Correct.
You guys practice the spells as a family?
Stupefy, Expelliarmus. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! You just spoke Latin. Actually,
No, we
that's
don't have
probably
we
not
don't
bad.
have any issues with Harry Potter. We just teach
Yeah.
them, you know.
Well, listen, guys, this has been a
Yeah.
good discussion. I hope that we've been able to give one another some things to think about, maybe give some of our listeners a chance to think about it, and consider, what does your line need to be? How much is too much? That's something that dads need to be thoughtful about and be prepared to be weird. And I think all of us probably at some point or another have felt kind of weird for the things we say, nope, that's not for my kids. But we got to be willing to do what's right, but we also got to be willing to give them the right perspective on the world. So thank you guys for everything that you're sharing. I did want to point out something interesting that maybe not everybody knows, that I wanted to make sure that everybody knew. And that is that Georgia was recently ranked in the preseason poll at number 4. Just poll number 5 in the AP poll. Matt, where was Alabama ranked? I can't remember. Do you remember?
I do remember, and the lowest or the worst we've been ranked in a long time, and that was number 8.
Number 8.
Yeah.
Even Notre Dame is rated higher than Alabama.
Right.
I guess we'll have to see what'll happen.
I guess we will. Hey, Jared, I've got something that it's not, people don't need to know this, but it's just kind of a funny story I heard, and probably not many people have heard it. There's a zoo in northern Denmark, and they explained in a Facebook post that if you have healthy animals that you want to give away for various reasons, feel free to donate it to them, that they would gently euthanize the pets and feed it to their animals at the zoo. So apparently this zoo got in trouble a couple of years ago because people saw them feeding a giraffe to the lions. So
a live giraffe?
No.
Not at the time it was being eaten.
So yeah, and then I just, last thing about this, I'm like, what do these zoo animals typically eat? Like, what do lions and tigers typically eat at a zoo? Do y'all have any idea? Had to look it up.
I
What do you think?
imagine, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they throw them some raw meat, probably cow
Occasionally
or
children.
something.
A lot of what, Nate?
Cats, I don't know.
No, a lot of mainly beef, but then horse too.
Horse, okay.
A lot of horse. Because zebras, or lions.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, yeah.
I
That's
imagine
what I've got.
horse would be a delicacy, I think, in a lion's den.
yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for your contributions. And I hope that all of you listeners out there, all 7 or 8 of you, have a wonderful weekend. And we'll see you next time on Fatherhood Friday.